Adrenaline, drama at WRC Safari Rally, live and exclusive on KBC Channel 1, your true sports partner.
Well, the Public Sector Accounting Standards Board was fully constituted back in the year 2014 after the Public Finance Management Act of 2012 was amended. And the board is supposed to streamline accounting standards and audit standards as well in government institutions or public sector. 8 years down the line, what has the board achieved? This week on Inside the Government, we're joined by Frederick Riaga. He's the CEO of the board. This will be our discussion, plus more. Thank you so very much indeed, Bona CEO, for finding time to be with us. 8 years down the line, what would you say has been the significant achievement of the board?
Thank you, Kimani, for having me on your show this week. As you rightly indicated, the Public Sector Accounting Standards Board has been around for 8 years. And there are registered significant milestones. To start us off, the board came in, took a very momentous decision to position Kenya as a global player, even within the public sector realms, by prescribing international internationally acknowledged, recognized basis for financial reporting as the basis for financial reporting in this country. By that decision, the board then said, we will adopt international public sector accounting standards as issued by the International Public Sector Accounting Standards Board that this country, through the accountancy profession, is a signatory to. And I would say that has been marked the onset of progress in the area of financial reporting. One, the board has then enabled to bring about comparability of financial statements issued from one agency to the next. Point number two, comparability of the financial reports as issued by individual entities year on. So when you compare the financial statement of 2019-2020 to that of 2020-2021, we've achieved comparability. And those are useful qualities of financial information that is communicated outside there because they enhance decision making. As you make a decision, you base it where was the institution in terms of financial performance in the previous year, and take into account the strategies that we have employed this year. Where are we? Our strategies generating value.
Can you paint for us, or to us, how the accounting and audit standards were before you came into the office, and how now the situation is after the board was constituted?
Prior to the board coming on board, Kenya operated on the basis of what we call government financial statistics that responds more to the economics way of reporting rather than financial reporting. Now, the world, there is that line of thought in terms of financial reporting, and that is promoted more by the economists. So when you see the World Bank, the IMF, they push, they require governments to report on the basis of financial statistics. But when you come and interpret now, and you're dealing with accounting, internationally accepted accounting standards, there is the acceptable minimum that one would have to comply with. Hence, the shift from the government, shift from singularly government statistics, financial statistics, to international public sector accounting standards are served to enhance the quality of the financial information that we communicate outside there. Mm-hmm. Secondly, we it was not, financial reporting was not as robust. Institutions were at varied levels. I would say that there were no systems by which then one would say we can enhance comparability across the sector. But as we speak now, with the unified approach to financial reporting brought about by the new reporting framework, the points that we have mentioned, that we've enhanced the quality of the financial reports, it's come to fruition. Yeah. Yeah.
You know, the idea behind creating the board was first of all to deal with or to streamline public financial reporting as well as public finance management. And number two was also to deal with the issues of siphoning of public funds, misreporting of accounting figures, and so much. Would you say the board has managed to deal with these vices?
A very good question, Brian, but I would want to tweak it slightly. Because when you talk of public finances and accountability of our public finances, we need to have an appreciation of the entire value chain, of which financial reporting is but one of them, and coming at the very latter stages. There is thought that for us to stem cases of malpractice within utilization of public finances, then we need to go at the very inception of a PFM cycle, which starts with the planning, budgeting. We are told that if we do not have systems functioning well, priorities having been set well at the planning and the budgeting phase, it doesn't matter how strong a financial system that you operationalize, you will be reporting on misapplied policy priorities. So it therefore takes, because then the value chain starts from planning, it moves to budgeting, budget execution and monitoring, then there is the bit of reporting, then oversight, and where oversight, then you talk about the audits. So each component ideally ought to play its role effectively for the greater accountability objective to be attained. So my thinking is that if we got the priorities right at the point of planning, and the budgeting gets more responsive to dealing with the priority issues that face the country of Kenya, then reporting becomes easier. If you strengthen reporting without having a planning and budgeting at the right phase, it will be the classical case of garbage in, garbage out. We'll be providing very good reports, but not on the right thing.
Has it been a smooth sail for the board?
Like you say, it's human nature to resist change. And as leadership, then when you're proposing a position that shifts anticipation, shifts goalposts, then you must also embed within the change strategies to manage change, to manage behavior, human behavior. Now, it hasn't been easy. It hasn't been easy because we are talking of a team that was used to reporting in a given manner, and you're telling them, please shift into this. So at the level of accountants, it took a lot of, as I've indicated, a lot of training, a lot of sensitization for them to look at the new framework as being responsive to the needs of the people, as being compliant and positioning the country at par with the global leaders. The second area that we've had to focus on is when we proposed the change to the reporting framework, it called for reorganization of systems and processes and procedures. And in government, that costs money. So we had to go in and pitch with the providers of public capital that there is value in this new approach to financial reporting. And we pitched around enhanced information base to support better decision making by government. And we have seen milestones. There is still some ground for us to cover because the success so achieved has gotten us to a 50% mark yet we still have to move to 100% mark. Now, there is the second leg, because when you're talking about public sector reporting, you transit from the basic, which is cash basis of reporting, to the full accrual framework of reporting. So I would say that in as far as moving along that continuum, we have registered success up to the 50% mark. We are starting a second journey of covering the last 50%, where the buy-in, the lobbying, the enticing, the sensitization of the enablers becomes also a major issue of concern for us.
How have you managed to achieve, a 50% success rate, in about 8 years' time, and when you bear in mind that you have a staffing level of less than 30 people in office?
As PSSB, the decision to adopt the International Public Sector Accounting Standards was done in full acknowledgement of the fact that standards development is expensive, both human capital-wise and financially. So the board taking that decision, we then circumvented the longer route, which is more expensive. And there are inherent benefits of going that route. One, you position yourself at international level. We are talking of a global village. The world today is a global village. So capital, when government floats bonds in Kenya, it's not purely done for the local investors. You do it for and attract investors from across the globe. So by the mere fact that we moved into that platform, an internationally acknowledged and renowned basis for financial reporting, then we were positioning ourselves in that route. The third point that I would mention is, yes, we have limited internal capacity, but I would say the team that I work with, a very youthful team, focused, commitment to bringing change to this country. And they have gone beyond what is humanly possible to deliver what the successes that we have achieved so far. Fourth, we have collaboratively approached our task, because we singled out and said PFM agenda would not be effectively delivered by a single institution. So then we said, how do we mapped out our environment. Who are these stakeholders that are aligned to the mandate of the board, to the vision, and aligned to the aspirations of the Public Financial Management Act? And how do we collaborate with them? And coming on top of my list, on my head, is the National Treasury, the Accountant General's Department, where we have collaborated very well in terms of, as and when we are considering a technical matter, we form joint teams to rummage through data and propose positions that would respond to the reporting needs of this country. Again, we have sought to leverage on ICT. When you conduct, we leverage on ICT a lot in terms of, and as we speak now, we have in place a system, an e-learning platform that will enable us to reach out to all the public sector reporting accountants from across this region at the click of a button. So they will register significant cost savings of not having to move accountants from the comfort of their desks. We're training them from remotely from wherever they are.
Yep. When you look at the entire landscape, from county governments to national governments, state-owned enterprises, sagas, and all these, where would you say you have registered the most success in helping, roll out your new standards?
The public sector was disaggregated into four main categories. One is the government business enterprises, those that are formed purely to pursue business and with the sole mandate of contributing to the exchequer through dividend payouts. And hence the board said, you guys, this cluster, you will report on the basis of the International Financial Reporting Standards that apply for the private sector. Point number two, we had...
These institutions you're talking about, entities like KenGen.
Absolutely.
Kenya Power.
Absolutely.
Portland Cement.
Absolutely.
East African Portland Cement.
East Africa Portland Cement. Kenya Airways, because at some point, because of the government stake in it. So all government business enterprises, those are formed with the objective of raking in incomes. then report under that. And for them, I would say the International Financial Reporting Standards was adopted way back in 1999. So we've had 22 years of continuous improvement. So the level at which those entities report and comply is comparable to the best. If you, for instance, today you picked the Kenya Pipeline's financial reports and you're comparing it with the Fortune 500 from the US, because they report on this basis of the same, though Fortune 5 could be on gaps, which is a mirror image of IFRS. But if you put them side by side, then you'd say they are you strike some form of comparability in terms of the quality of information that is put forth there. So that is a segment that I would say we have registered the most level of success. This entities reporting under IFRS. Now for the others, and it didn't come cheap. It came out of deliberate effort to invest in people, to invest in systems, and to invest in capacity building. Now for the other segments, where the board then said we will have sections that of public sector that are semi-autonomous, which then would report on IPSAS, the basis of IPSAS accrual, semi-autonomous and the regulatory institutions would report on the basis of IPSAS accrual. IPSAS accrual and IFRS are more or less the same because they are based, the principles are based on similar sets of principles. The only one, IPSAS focusing on service-oriented institutions, while IFRS then focuses on business enterprises.
You have such a huge task, of ensuring that, standards, accounting standards, are adhered to in all government, in all spheres of government, public finances. But when you look at, your capacity, you're talking about a board with about 27 staff who are supposed to ensure compliance, in the public sector, where you're talking about trillions of shillings. This is definitely tough on your side, right?
It is tough to balance between the inadequacies of the internal resources against external expectation. You are supposed to support financial reporting on a 2.7 trillion shilling economy. Budget, sorry, not economy, 2.7 trillion shilling budget, the last figures, against, I would say, a modest budget. But we, as I did mention, we have a team that is focused, committed, but there is just the extent to which you can stretch human capability. So with additional support in terms of budgetary allocation, we can do more. But we also take cognizance of the fact that, yes, our public finances today is under great pressure. So as a team, we've sat and down and said, we are not doing it for us. We are doing it for the future generation. We are doing it for our grandchildren. So what's best fit? How do we put our best foot forward to ensure that we scratch the match that we can to bring about some level of change that would generate outcomes for the benefit now and into the future. But number two, we acknowledge that there is just the much that we can do within as an institution. So we've thrown out the silo mentality. We are moving out and reaching to our stakeholders, to institutions of government that are capable of sharing our dream as a board to entrenching accounting standards as the basis of supporting decision making. We are stretching it even within the private sector. There are instances we have reached out to the private sector to tap into their skill set where necessary, to bring in a few skills into the board to support the idea of standard making and development of various frameworks that would facilitate implementation of the standards. So by and large, collaboration outside, internal collaboration, commitment within the team, we'll see us somewhere. But we are then saying we could do more with a better resourcing.
What would you qualify as as an optimum staffing level?
When the board was established, the board then, the top organ, felt that a staffing level of 47 would do for a start. When we came in and relooked at the magnitude of the work that lays ahead of us, we broke it down and came up with a figure of about 120 staff that would ordinarily enable us move the mandate of the board and achieve better milestones with minimal effort, with a lot of ease.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So you're talking about 127 staff,
yep.
And now you have 27. So that's a staffing level of less than 3%. How then are you expected, to perform your mandate, when your staffing level is around 3-4% of your capacity?
O'Brien, a good question. And as I've indicated, we will, as a secretariat, we've said, yes, the limitations, the inhibitions in place, notwithstanding, we will try the best that we can to propose changes where necessary to support financial reporting institutions to report better. We will try with the limited resources to do what is humanly possible. We will stretch ourselves beyond our colleague, our compatriot, Eliud Kipchoge, just demonstrated that you can achieve that which you set out to achieve, but with the right mindset. That is what we are telling, the message that the leadership within the board is telling the staff, that we can achieve this. We can achieve this. Let's look into the future. I like one point.
Then you sound like you have resigned to fate.
No,
that this is where we are. We must do away with that.
I'm coming to that. I'm coming to that. The motivation to put our best foot forward is we are kind of writing history. That limited, an organization with a very limiting staff complement did so much. However, that notwithstanding, we have reached out to the National Treasury, our parent ministry, and requested for more resources because the ministry is the principal consumer of the outcomes of this. We are hopeful and we appreciate the National Treasury and the leadership of the CS, Ukuriatani, and the PS, Dr. Muya, that acknowledged the importance of the board. And in the last budget cycle, we saw our budget allocation grow significantly from the paltry what it used to be by an additional resource base that enable us to move quite a bit. So we also a request that it sits with the National Treasury just to consider and allocate more resources to enable us recruit more staff so that we stop scratching the surface. We dig deeper into the area of financial reporting more effectively.
Very well. I mean, in the recent past, there has been cases of, wastage of public resources, by various government institutions, county government. Where do you come in this value chain to stop this kind of a trend?
In as much as it's more post-mortem, one other mandate of the board is to prescribe internal auditing standards and risk management. Now, at the level of internal auditing standards, then the board has pushed through policy recommendations and is supporting entrenchment or strengthening of internal audit mechanisms within the public sector institutions to ensure that the systems of internal controls are strong enough to ensure that what we set to achieve, we achieve it in the most cost-effective manner in full compliance with the law. So as we await financial reporting, there are mitigating steps put in place through internal audit, which the board is equally responsible for prescribing standards for, which would then curtail any form of deviation off budget, any form of deviation of what the regulatory frameworks provide for. The other way that we look into that area is we as a board have also the mandate to prescribe risk management frameworks for government. And by risk management, we essentially saying entrenching public thought around the area of risks and risks that events that would occur that would then make it untenable to achieve the results that you set out. Corruption being one of them. So at this stage, we are at the phase of developing a national policy on risk management for public sector consumption. And I'm glad the PS, Dr. Muya, came out very strongly when we made the recommendation, and he said he is fully behind it. He will push for it. So we are at advanced stage of ensuring, putting in place the framework to guide risk management and developing the various enabling frameworks at entity level, guiding that process at entity level, that as we think of financial reporting, then we think of the risks, one of them being the risk of pilferage of funds, and propose ways of mitigating any such occurrence should they happen.
From where you sit or you stand, are you better off being a semi-autonomous government institution or being a fully fledged regulator?
Standard setting and monitoring, when you talk of standards, you're pointing to a regulatory function. And regulatory functions must be distinct, independent of the implementers of what? The standards. So where I sit, I think the board would be more effective. And I thank the inaugural board that actually started that line of thought and said we must create a distinct enterprise out of the mainstream government that would then prescribe the financial reporting and monitor their implementation. So I think for effectiveness, a distinct and independent board would be better for financial reporting for this country.
Good. As we wind up, what should the public expect of the board going forward?
As a board, we have prioritized one key project of transitioning the entire public sector from cash basis of accounting to full accrual. Now, in the near future, we are engaged in policy discussions as to when that should be done. And as into the near future, the public then should expect from the board a framework that would give them a comprehensive set of financial information that contains all the possible information they may require as a form of accountability from their consumers of their tax revenues. Yeah, and by that, we are saying that the financial statements then that we will present out, the government will present out of this new project, would provide a holistic view of what public sector public sector governance is all about.
Very good. Frederick, thank you very much for finding time to be with us this evening.
Pleasure is all mine.
Frederick Riaga is the CEO of Public Sector Accounting Standards Board, joining us to help us and give us more insight about the role of the board and what they have managed to achieve, as well as the challenges and how they're dealing with them. And of course, a look into the future. This has been Inside Government. Thank you for your time. We'll do this again on Thursday, same time right here on KBC Channel 1. O'Brien Kimani is my name. Have a good night.
Tunakupa burudani. na umbea, yani stories zinazo trend kwenye mitandao ya kijamii.
See baby, now we are two in one. We are two in one.
Interview kali za wasanii wapendao.
Mguu pande panda milima, izungushie hapo ma.
Ndani ya March of Life kupitia KBC Channel 1 na Pwani FM.
Kuanzia mida ya saa 3 mpaka mida ya 5 kamili asubuhi. Ukiwa nami ni Teken 1GB.
Mimi ni Marco. Keep it locked.
Malewa.
The greatest rally in the world is back in Kenya. Catch all the action of WRC Safari Rally live and exclusive on KBC Channel 1 from 24th to 27th June. See the world's best drivers navigate their machines on Kenya's rough terrain at breakneck speeds. Experience the thrills, adrenaline, drama and excitement as man and machine do battle. Don't miss out. WRC Safari Rally, live and exclusive on KBC Channel 1, your true sports partner.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu fights to block the new alliance from taking office, criticizing new coalition as dangerous. International pressure mounts on Ethiopia to grant humanitarian access to Tigray as famine looms. And parents of 136 kidnapped Nigerian students want government to do more to get their children back. This is Africa Live. A very warm welcome to the show. I am Penina Karibe, and joining me with the business headlines is Uche.
Thank you, Penina. And here's a look at what's coming up on Africa Live Biz. South Africa turns to private firms to improve the country's electricity supply. And Ghana cuts its lending rate to 13.5% as it recovers from the pandemic. Of course, all that coming up within the program. For now, back to you, Penina.
Thank you, Uche. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is fighting back against a coalition of his opponents. 8 political parties have agreed to form a new government. If the group wins approval by parliament, it would remove Netanyahu from power after 12 years as prime minister. Netanyahu has called on right-wing lawmakers to block the new alliance from taking office and criticized the coalition as dangerous. Stephanie Fried reports from Tel Aviv on the challenges ahead.
Change. That's the name and aim of Israel's newest coalition, made up of disparate partners whose ideologies range from conservative right to liberal left.
Mr. President, I'm calling to say that I have formed the government.
The coalition's formation technically ends the term for Israel's longest-serving Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and endeavors to unfreeze years of political stalemate.
We're in a rough economic state, a rough security state. There is no way a responsible adult wouldn't step in and say, enough is enough, stop.
But in a country where governments last an average 2 of their 4-year tenures, future challenges are guaranteed. If approved by Israel's parliament, the new coalition will see Naftali Bennett, the pro-settlement leader of the far-right Yamina party, serve as prime minister for 2 years.
He'll be succeeded by centrist Yesh Atid party head Yair Lapid, but skeptics question whether the new government will survive long enough for Lapid to move into the prime minister position.
Political orientations among coalition partners run the gamut, from Arab members of the Islamic movement's political wing to right-wing politicians opposed to Palestinian statehood. Change coalition leaders will reportedly avoid charged issues like settlement, Palestinian statehood, and the Israeli-Palestinian conflict for a year. They'll focus instead on neglected education, infrastructure, and health programs, and pass a long-absent state budget. Benjamin Netanyahu vows he'll continue fighting as he stands trial on corruption charges and moves to the opposition. But with the advent of the new coalition, his position has substantially weakened. Stephanie Fried, CGTN, Tel Aviv.
China has criticized the U.S. for spying on its allies. Danish media has reported that the U.S. National Security Agency was working with Denmark's intelligence agency to spy on European leaders. French President Emmanuel Macron and German Chancellor Angela Merkel responded to the news reports on Monday, saying what the U.S. did was unacceptable. The spying allegations come even as the U.S. places restrictions on Chinese tech companies, accusing them of spying on behalf of the Chinese government, allegations Beijing has denied. At a news conference on Thursday, the Chinese Foreign Ministry said the USA's alleged spying on its allies underscored Washington's hypocrisy.
For a long time, the United States, relying on its technological advantage, has been eavesdropping on the world on a large scale. On the other hand, it has been unreasonably suppressing the legitimate businesses of other countries on the grounds of so-called national security. There is every reason to suspect that the so-called clean network is designed to support America's high-tech monopoly and open the door to unimpeded espionage. Could this clean network be another surveillance network controlled by the U.S.? The United States should immediately stop the vicious practice of large-scale eavesdropping and suppression of foreign companies under the guise of national security and do the world justice.
World health leaders are meeting in Oxford, hoping to reach a deal to help reduce the risk of global pandemics and other threats to health. G7 ministers want to improve early detection of animal-borne diseases and ensure poorer nations get more access to COVID vaccines. Andrew Wilson reports from Oxford.
Summer 2021 is turning into a global balancing act of competing priorities surrounding this pandemic. The unpredictability of coronavirus variants has tempered some of the international confidence in the global vaccination program. The G7 leaders will descend on the UK next week to thrash out differing positions on international travel, healthcare cooperation, data sharing, and the importance of robust clinical standards. And they'll find that even with its world-beating vaccine program, the British government has just taken the last remaining holiday destination, Portugal, off its safe travel list. Even on the steps of the G7 Health Ministers Summit in Oxford, the government message was sounding familiar.
Well, we do have to be careful about international travel, and the Delta variant is just one new variant, another new variant, and it shows why it's right to be careful about international travel. Countries around the world have learned the importance of that, including us here in the UK. So that's something we look at very carefully, and I fully respect the fact that my counterparts across the world also look very carefully at that sort of at international travel, and they're right to do so.
At the summit, the agenda includes global health security, data sharing and clinical trials, but will be dominated by vaccines, equitable vaccine supply and international vaccine production, especially with the guest countries India, South Korea, South Africa and Australia joining the debates remotely. There's a lot of pressure, including from Washington now, to allow other countries to produce the successful vaccines, AstraZeneca, Moderna and Pfizer, in their own plants. Britain and Germany, however, are still against it. But with the variants persisting in slowing timetables and reducing confidence, all the medical community still has to offer is that one solution: immunize the world's population. And that was never going to be easy. Andrew Wilson, CGTN, Oxford.
Pressure is mounting on Ethiopia to declare a ceasefire in the northern province of Tigray to allow humanitarian organizations to reach millions of people who face famine. The war in Tigray has disrupted harvests and led to huge problems for the delivery of aid to communities, particularly in rural areas. More than 2 million are thought to have been displaced by the conflict. The UK has called for a cessation of hostilities by all conflict parties and unfettered humanitarian access so that aid can flow and famine can be averted. The UN says up to 90% of the population in Tigray are in need of food aid. We spoke to CGTN's Ethiopia correspondent Girum Chala to find out more about the situation on the ground. Take a listen.
At the moment, the situation is there, but the government is saying that it is trying to address this situation. And by the way, from 93 localities, the administrative areas in Tigray region, only 14 of them are being administered by the government when it comes to providing relief services, but there is 79 being covered by the UN and other relief organizations. So the government is working, saying that it's working with 8 organizations, and it's also collaborating others who wish to support this relief services. By the way, we spoke to a higher official from Ministry of Foreign Affairs just now for this report. They said that the conflict in Tigray is not really happening. There is no major conflict happening. Of course, in pocket areas in different parts of the regional state, there are also sabotage, majorly, as they said, from the TPLF side. And also the government mission of capturing former leaders of TPLF is ongoing. The mission is not completed yet, but they say that in general, the Tigray regional state is peaceful, and the provisional administration itself is handling so many government relief services.
The Ugandan minister who survived an assassination attempt on Tuesday has been discharged from hospital. His daughter and driver were killed in the attack by unknown gunmen riding on 2 motorcycles. Ugandan police have released CCTV footage of the assailants, but the men have not been identified. Isabel Nakiria tells us more.
The former Chief of Defense Forces and Works Minister General Katumba Wamala said he was feeling much better after a surgery to remove bullets that were lodged in his arms. He left hospital in the capital Kampala, his arms still bandaged, to attend his daughter's burial. General Katumba said he didn't know the motives of the attackers. Several people have been arrested. 4 officers manning the government's CCTV control room have also been arrested. Police say they could be charged with negligence after some cameras were found to be non-functional. A team of security operatives from police and the army are still piecing together evidence before a conclusive report is released. Investigators picked up cartridges from the scene of crime for forensic analysis. Ugandan police are also appealing to the public to help identify the attackers who were seen on CCTV footage trailing General Katumba's car, though their faces are not visible. The footage shows the back view of the 4 men riding on 2 motorcycles with concealed number plates. Isabel Nakiria, CGTN Kampala, Uganda.
Meanwhile, in Nigeria, officials from Niger State confirmed gunmen abducted 136 students